Hey, Encounter family and friends. I just wanted to take this moment and share with you the month of October will wrap up our 3-year capital campaign debt reduction that we started in 2016. It's hard to believe it's been 3 years since we completed our renovation project and expansion project for the church. And so we did a campaign to reduce our debt. We wanted to start right away. We pledged to raise $56,000, and what we brought in was 60% of that, which is great news. And what we're able to pay off is all the tech, light, and sound upgrades. That's all paid off. We own that now. We also were able to pay off the loan for the addition to the driveway and the resurface of the driveway. So that's all paid off, debt-free on that. And then the rest of the money, we're able to pay down our mortgage to where it was at originally, at $325,000, give or take. Now we're down to $293,000. There's a lot to be thankful about. But what we want to do is we don't want to end that campaign. We want to continue to keep that going to pay down our debt because we want to be debt-free. And so what I'm going to have you think about is over the month of October, we're going to be praying and considering, and I'm going to be challenging the body to consider once again to put another pledge together for 3 years, maybe for some, maybe 2 years, maybe 1 year, but to consider doing up to 3 years so we can pay down this debt here at Encounter and be debt-free. We're going to have pledge cards available, and then you can check on the pledge cards like we did before what you feel led by God to do. For the month of October, you can turn in the card on Sunday morning during communion or at guest service in the lobby, and that will be your pledge for the next 1, 2, or 3 years. And let's see what we can raise up to be debt-free going forward as a church.
Good morning, Encounter Community Church. My name is Austin, and these are your announcements for today. Ignite, our youth ministry here at the church, just kicked off a few weeks ago, and it's just a lot of fun. Right now, we're going through the story of God from beginning to the end, and it's just a powerful series learning about the nature of God and who He is. Ignite Youth Group is for grades 6 through 12, and we meet on Wednesdays here at the church from 7 to 8:30. Doors open up at 6:30, and it's just a lot of fun. So if you've been coming to Encounter for a little while now, we have a thing for you on October 20th following second service. This is just an opportunity for you to hang out after church, you and your family, and just to hang out with us and to eat food and get to know the staff and the leadership here at the church. Again, that's October 20th, directly following second service. And it's for those of you who may be new to Encounter and just want to get to know us a little bit more. Our next men's breakfast will be taking place on October 19th, and it'll be going from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Trunk or Treat is right around the corner, and this is taking place on October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m. If you'd like some more information on how you can get plugged in and help out with our Trunk or Treat event here at the church, there's more information for you at guest services. All right, Encounter Community Church, that's all your announcements for today. If you're new, I just want to thank you for coming and spending your Sunday with us. We have a gift out in the lobby for you, as well as just a little information card for you to fill out so we can get to know you just a little bit more. Encounter, that's all the announcements for today. Enjoy the rest of today's service and have a great week.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm excited we get to kick off our new series called Weathered, and today we're going to talk about the first part of the series, the first installment, Weathering. But before we jump into that, I want to highlight two things from the announcement real quick, or at least one thing. Our commitment cards are on at the guest service desk. So in the video notice that we talked about, we're going to take the month of October, and this gives you time to pray and consider what God may be moving on your heart to contribute either for 1, 2, or 3 years to do our debt reduction capital campaign. We finished up our last one that we did for 3 years, as I mentioned in the video, and we have new ones up. I've already put mine in there, so you can grab one of these at guest service. They're there, and we're going to be doing this for the whole month of October to give you a chance to pray and then I'll let you know the totals, what pledges are, so we can be excited and celebrate that and go forward to get this place paid down and eventually paid off. And then, as you noticed, a couple of the worship team had some new Encounter shirts. Yeah, baby. So if you are interested in getting these shirts, we have some available while supplies last, and you can go to guest service afterwards. There's a sign-up sheet. Here's my little disclaimer, okay? I've been here 11 years, so I know how it goes. If you go up there and say, hey, I need a small, you take it, and it's, I'll pay you next week, guess what happens? We never see the money, rarely. So what we want you to do is sign up. We'll hold a shirt for you. If you have $12, you can pay it then. If you got to bring it next week, we'll hold the shirt for you. Just sign up, fill out your name. That way we know that you've been paid and you can get a shirt. So I just know that's how it goes, and wanted to let you know. So they're available, they look great, and they're very comfortable. So just make a mental note of that. Well, let's jump into this. Enough infomercial here. I am excited, as I mentioned, to kick off our new series called Weathered, and today we're going to talk about and kind of introduce this series and what it's about and kind of the first piece of it. And let me just give you a little background. This series is one I've been working on since late spring. And I've done something I've never done before when it comes to a series. I actually asked one of our sister churches, the pastor at the Well Church in Ionia, Joe Liprant. Him and I talked one day, and we said, what would it be like if we did a series together? You and I come together and brainstorm about something. And so we said, yeah, that would be cool. So we've been spending time together through May, June, July, and August, getting together and putting a series together. We're kicking it off this weekend. They're going to be kicking it off in three weeks, but it's the same idea. The series Weathered. And it was really nice because a lot of times as a pastor, I got to come up with all this stuff on my own. I do have a leadership team that has helped out periodically in series, but a lot of time it's on my shoulders. And it's nice having another pastor who we can just throw stuff up on a dry eraser board and say, where is God leading us? And so this came out of those times we got together. So this is going to be fun for me. I'm excited for this, and I think it's going to be something that, as Darren was praying, it's just something that God was working in my heart throughout the summer in my devotional, and particularly the book I was reading. So just a little backdrop, this series will take us all the way through the month of October, even through the month of November. The last Sunday in November before Thanksgiving weekend is when we'll wrap up, and we want to wrap up with communion and baptism. So if you're thinking of kicking around the idea of being baptized, what better way to do it, to wrap up a series than being baptized on that Sunday. So you'll be seeing more information on that, but just make a mental note. So this idea of weathered, Pastor Rob, what are you thinking? Where does this come from? What was your idea on this? Well, let me just kind of set the tone for you. I want to show you something here. This baby is my pride and joy. This is my softball mitt. It has been definitely weathered, okay? When it comes to a softball mitt, I've had this for about 12 years. You can tell it used to be black. It's wore down through time and playing. And the last 3 years, I've been thinking about getting a new softball mitt, but I keep dragging my feet on it. Why is that? Anybody know? Anybody play baseball or softball? Why would I be dragging my feet on getting a new softball mitt? That's right, baby. It is broken. It is so hard to get a brand new glove broken. And that's why I drag my feet, because this glove fits me so well. I wonder if there's any dust. I was hoping there'd be some dust there, but I must have cleaned it off a little bit. This glove is broken so well, and it just fits my hand. It has characteristics, I call them valuable characteristics, that kind of show all that it's been through. In fact, when I catch a softball now, this glove is so broken that anytime I catch any softball, it hits right there. New gloves have padding. The padding in here is gone, okay? Every time a ball is thrown at me, it hurts. All right, but I don't care because it's broken. It fits well. And when I think about the idea of a broken softball mitt or baseball mitt, for some reason, when it comes to our culture and world, we'd rather speed up a weathering process instead of going through the time and grinding out. That's why I don't want to buy a new glove. If I could buy a new glove and it looked, well, not like this, but it felt like this, I would do it. But it doesn't work that way. But in our culture and the world, we just want things now. It's kind of that instant gratification. We don't like weather and to be in process when things take time. In some industries, chemicals are used to speed up the weathering process. For instance, I got some pictures up here of some jeans. All right, now you can buy jeans that look like they're old, okay? They look like they've been weathered. They have this allure. They have this perception that they're old and they're going to fit well, but you try them on. That's not the case. I don't know about you, but I like a good these jeans here are probably 5 or 6 years old. You want to know what? They feel so nice because they're broken. They've been weathered. They've been through it a little bit. You know, now we can buy furniture that has been antiqued, looks old, but it's actually new. But it has the allure that it's durable. It has the allure that it's gone through a lot. You know, like older furniture seems to last longer. Well, a lot of people know that, so let's weather this a little bit. Let's antique it a little bit to make it look like it. We want things that are solid. We want things that are good quality. Then many times the good quality takes time, but we don't want to wait for the time. And so you have chemicals that speed up this process. In cooking, we've invented the microwave to speed up the heating process. In life, once we have a degree, we want a good paying job right out of the gate without having to earn it. We don't want to put in the time or the energy to prove ourselves or develop a reputation. When an electrician or a plumber has to be a journeyman for a while, you have to do that before you get the job, before you get the reputation, as I mentioned, or the money that comes with it. We just want it now. We live in a culture that wants things right now, or we think that we are entitled to it. Although we may want to be weathered, and we agree, yeah, things take time, we don't really want to go through the weathering process. We just want things to happen quickly for us. We want the microwave version of success. I remember it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we had man camp behind the church, and in our back 40, what we call it. And I had to speak that Saturday night. The guy that usually spoke, I should say, had called me a couple weeks earlier and said, hey, could you speak? I'm going to be out of town that night. Could you speak? I said, absolutely, I can do that. And so I went back there and spoke, and I put on my best pair of broken-in weathered jeans. And I spoke a message, thought it did well. And Austin was there, okay, our worship leader. He was there, and he came up to me and said, hey, Pastor Rob, man, that was great. Great message, man. That was really powerful. Hey, I need to tell you something. Your jeans in the back, there's a big hole in them. I didn't know if you knew that. And I'm thinking, oh, no. But here's the thing. What I was knowing, but I didn't care. I mean, yes, I went home, and it was a pretty significant rip, all right? And my underwear was showing. I wore dark underwear, so it wasn't too bad. But it was pretty significant. I wasn't sad because people might have saw my underwear. That wasn't the big deal. The big deal was my favorite pair of jeans. Now I had to throw them away. I broke them in. Those jeans were my favorite. There's something about when we do a weathering process, there's something about when we grind it out, there's something important. There's a value with that. But here's the thing I want you to think about. When it comes to this instant gratification, what if we actually thought about doing the work? What if we took our time and did the small things well? What would happen if we refused to accept the cheap or expedited success? Seriously, what would happen instead of wanting things to happen instantaneously, instead of wanting a glove to be broken instantly, we were patient with it? See, Webster's defines weathered as worn or to wear away and change through, listen to this, long exposure of natural and physical elements. We don't like that. Long exposure. Weathered products are the ones that have been exposed to the elements and time. They produce valuable characteristics because they went through long exposure. They went through the elements. They went through the hardening process. I mean, think about it. For example, wine. I've heard that if wine, the longer it ferments, the better it tastes. Leather, for instance, the best leather that either you wear or sit in, Some of you have leather in your car, leather sofas. The best leather is the leather that has been worn over time. Elements. It feels the best. A girl's best friend, diamonds. Diamonds come because of hundreds to thousands, even more years of hardening with the elements, weathering. So once again, the most valuable characteristics, church, we can have in life come from going through the work, doing the small things well, and not accepting the cheap counterfeit. I get it. I understand. In our culture, in our world, we want instant gratification. We want the job now. We want the money now. We want all the toys now. And because of that, a lot of us go in debt to do that. And our priorities go out of whack. But what if we just took a moment and said, well, how about I take a different approach? How about I do a U-turn from what culture says to what God is awakening, stirring in me in this area, in this arena in my life? Now, one of the ideal verses that we used throughout this series that is going to be the anchor, I think encompasses this whole concept of weathered. And it comes from a book in the New Testament. The book is called James, and it comes right out of James' first chapter, chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. And James says this to really set the tone for his audience of saying, hey, you want to know what it means to be a Christ follower. You want to know what it means to follow Jesus. You want to know, I want to give you the expectation up front. Here's what you need to know, because I don't want to candy coat it. I don't want you to come back and say, you didn't tell me that this was going to happen. So listen to what James said, and this is going to be our anchor verse that we'll come back to periodically throughout the series. It goes like this, James chapter 1, verse 2. He says this, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. In those verses, it's so powerful what he says there. Now, let me ask you something. What would you say? Would you say that this statement, I want to ask you a question. Would you say that this is a true statement? I like maturity, but not maturing. Hello? I like maturity, but not maturing. We like that. We like the first part of that statement. We don't like the second part of that statement. Because if we're honest, we want to be mature. We just don't like the process of maturing. That's why the words of James, Jesus' half-brother, are so helpful to us. He reminds us of the bigger perspective, of the bigger picture, of what really is going on here. He shows us that pain and the struggles we currently face are part of a larger narrative, a larger story, a larger perspective. Listen to his words again. He says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. You are going to face trials of many kinds. Some small, medium, large. You know what's going to happen. Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. You are going to be tested. Your faith is going to be tested. Why? Because God wants to know, are you genuine? Are you following this thing for me or for your preferences? Did that hit too close to home? I'm just a realist here. I know what my heart tends to do at times. Sometimes we do this thing called Christianity for our preferences to kind of ease our conscience a little bit so we can do what we want to do. Is it real to you? Is it meaningful to you to test your faith, to produce perseverance, and let perseverance finish its work? Too many people quit. Too many people come into this relationship with Jesus and they get all jacked up with the Jesus juice. I've seen it so many times. People come into church, yeah, man, this church is awesome. People are so welcoming. Things are so good, and they're good for about a month, 2 months. They volunteer in a lot of different things, and then they hit some hardship, right? They hit some difficulty. They have trials. And they're like, wait a minute. What happened to that old, good, loving feeling? Was it really genuine? Was it a knee-jerk? See, finish its work. So many people have left churches because it gets difficult. Because in that difficulty, that's when, is your heart really in the right place? Is it about God and trusting Him, or is it about your agenda, your thing, not God's things? Finish its work so that you may, and the whole point is that you may be mature. To be mature, you're going to have to go through the maturing process. Many of you know this not only because you've experienced this in your life, but you've seen it in your kids, and you're currently seeing it in your kids. Because God wants us complete, not lacking anything. Now, let me just say a few things with this. Joy, pure joy. I mean, honestly, when was the last time you had pure joy about a struggle or conflict in your life? That doesn't happen. It doesn't come naturally. It's like saying, enjoy the pain. It seems like a contradiction, right? It doesn't make sense. What do you mean, enjoy the pain? Who enjoys the pain? See what James is saying, what he's trying to let his audience get a glimpse of, what he's trying to help them see from his own experience, is that when you go through those things, you get perspective. Because perseverance helps you understand that there's something much larger going on than you. Did you hear me? There's something much larger going on than just your thing. God's into transforming you, humbling you, helping you not think of just your agenda, but His plan. It's interesting that word pure in the original language that this was written in means to purify by fire, to make clean. Purifying by fire means there is a lot going on. The impurities are being taken off, going through the heat, going through the elements to purify it. James uses that specifically to paint the picture. Another translation says, consider it all joy. It all, in the original language, has this idea that in every part of our life, every significant part makes a big whole. So every part that gets refined by fire, the big picture is that all that will work into a mature whole. And then he says to have joy in the midst of that. So you can have, when you're going through the hardening, when you are being weathered, when you're feeling that conflict and those struggles in life, when you're having that question, God, why? Knowing that this is the testing of your faith because it will produce something in you. So you will have perseverance and you will mature and not lack anything. So you need to delight in that. And I know it's contradictory to what culture says, but can I just tell you something? You're here because culture in the world doesn't fill and sustain you. And what God is saying to you is that when you experience these trials in life, remember perspective. I get it. I understand you're not going to have those moments when you're going to feel great. But even in that, that's where you anchor in to the promises of God. You anchor into a truth like James chapter 2. Or chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. You hang on to that. You tether yourself to that in the moments when everything's coming against you. And say, you know what, I'm gonna have joy. And it might be like this. You're going through something like, see, I'm having joy. I'm having joy. But it's better than the alternative. Because when you get grumpy, then you just set the collateral damage for everybody else. God has made it clear to me by the Holy Spirit time and time again. When I come home, he reminds me almost every time, you set the tone. You set the tone. Rob, you set the tone, you come home. I don't care if I'm in a disagreement with my wife or my kids are driving me nuts. I set the tone. And it might not seem like something significant because he said trial of any kind. Sometimes the trial is something just small where the kids are just, come on, daddy, 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 and you're exhausted and you're tired or whatever it may be. Pure joy. Pure joy. Tether to that. It's not going to come natural. Our flesh doesn't want to do that. But that's something about maturity. Because it's not about your feelings as it is about God's truth, and your feelings need to anchor in God's truth. See, James is talking about the weathering process. He's talking about a bigger picture. I get, of course, pain and conflict and struggle don't feel good, but when you are able to see how they contribute to the bigger picture, you'll be able to, listen to me, appreciate them. When you come on the other side of that, through that struggle, you'll be able to appreciate. I mean, how many people have come up to me, even in my own story, when I went through a hardship in life and you come out the other side of that, before when you're going into that, it's like, oh, I don't want to ever go through that. And then you come out the other side of that, and people say these crazy things like, if I am so thankful that happened, here's a crazier statement, I wouldn't trade that for who I am today. Basically what they're saying is that they've been weathered. And they are a different person because of it. A person that before that, if they saw that person, like, man, that person's inspiring. And then they go through that, like they get a piece of that. And then they inspire others. That's perspective. And see, our Creator God sees this potential in you and in me. Sure, it might be hard right now for where you are and what you're going through, but remember that everything you're going through is teaching you what perseverance actually is. I mean, you all here probably can say perseverance. It's pretty easy to say. Now it's time to actually persevere. Do you hear me? You say it, now mean it. And remember what James said, let perseverance finish its work. Don't quit, don't bail. Let it finish its work so that you may be mature. That word perseverance, I want to give the definition from the original language, what it means, that word perseverance, because it doesn't play well in our culture. Perseverance means remaining behind, enduring or patiently enduring, waiting behind. Let me give you this picture. Here's the example of how we wait behind. When we're at the grocery store, now this is not as common now because they have all these self-checkouts, but when there's people in line, you're ready to go, you're like, oh, this is how we are. Like, I need to go. People don't know what I have going on. We need to patiently endure, remaining behind, enjoying the ride. You can't I remember in college, it's like, it felt like 4 years later, it took me 6, but 6 years later to get a degree because I couldn't make up my mind what I wanted to do. It felt like an eternity, like there's no way. And I almost gave up because I said, oh, there's so many classes, I got to do this class, that class. And I remember talking with a friend of mine who said, basically, essentially what he was saying is, Rob, enjoy the ride. Yes, and here's the thing, there is a bigger picture. And when the day I walked and got my diploma, man, it was so worth it. I talked to so many people when they finished their apprenticeship in an electrician or whatever it was, man, they were so thankful because it did something in them. They valued it. Here's the thing, they appreciated it. They didn't think they were entitled to it. They didn't think, well, they owe me. That's not how it works. Because owing and being entitled to it doesn't produce valuable characteristics. I mean, that glove, that softball glove looks like a piece of junk, maybe to you, but to me it's valuable. I mean, I wish you could see some of the catches I've made with that glove. No, we won't get into that. But it's important. It's broken, and God wants us to be broken. So although it's really, really hard, I get it, although you'd rather not go through the trials, be joyful about it. And look and remember the bigger picture, the bigger perspective. Now, God wouldn't be asking us
to think about this or do this if Jesus himself, the second member of the Godhead, he faced his own hardship and weathering. He wouldn't ask us to go through something if he didn't go through it himself. And Jesus Christ did. We all know this. But I want you to listen to what God said about what his son was going to go through to help us understand the words of James, to help us understand what it means to experience weathering and to be weathered. And he's saying this through the prophet Isaiah in the Old Testament, Isaiah 53:10. I want you to listen to his words here. This is a foreshadow of what God was going to do for you and me, and it had to go through the road of weathering and hardship. Starting in verse 10 of Isaiah chapter 53, it said, "Still, it's what God had in mind all along, to crush him," who's him, Jesus, "with pain." Did you hear that? I mean, those are pretty bold words. To crush him with pain. The plan was that he gave himself as an offering for sin so that he'd see life come from it. Life, life, and more life. And God's plan will deeply prosper through him. In order for people to experience in life, Jesus had to go through, be crushed by the pain because of our sin. But he went the road of hardship and weathering to set us free and to give us life, life, and more life. When you are going through difficulties, if you have perspective, if you persevere, you're going to taste life, life, and more life. Parts of your heart are going to continue to be restored and healed. The question is, do you believe that? In fact, later on, Jesus says these words in the Gospel of John 16:33, one of my favorite verses. He said, "I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows." In other translations, you will face trouble, it says. "But take heart because I have overcome the world." There's something interesting he says there. He doesn't say have heart. He says take heart. In the moment when you're going through difficulty, in the moments when you're going through the trials and sufferings, you can't just have heart. You have to be intentional to take heart, to believe that you're going to make it through this. It's not going to just vicariously happen or happen by osmosis. You got to take it. You got to take heart. What Jesus is saying is being intentional, hanging on to the promises of God. In fact, Jesus is the greatest example of this battle between this inner struggle of going through this process of hardening, weathering, and following God and trusting God's bigger picture. You can see Jesus battling this when he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. And I want you to bring you into this just quickly to give a picture. I think this is a great picture of the tension and battle when Jesus is going through a weathering process to be an example to you and to me that if he can do it, he's going to be there to help us through it. He says that in Matthew 28. "I will never leave you or forsake you." Well, here's how he did that. Listen to the words in Matthew 26, just before chapter 28. Starting in 39, "And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will.'" He's talking about what he has to do at the cross. He's about ready to get arrested. His disciples were supposed to be praying for him and being there to strengthen him for this mission he was about to go on, for you and me. He goes on to say, "And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, 'So, could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter in temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak.'" Isn't that always the case? Verse 42, "Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, 'My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done.' And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for a third time, not once, not twice, 3 times he prayed, saying the same words." He was agonizing over this. But at the end of the day, he got and understood the bigger picture, the bigger perspective. He knew this was the road that he had to go to bring life, life, and more life. He knew he had to be crushed so you and I could experience freedom. I remember I was having a conversation with my cousin. His name's Chris, over 10 years ago. He's agnostic or atheistic, wherever he fits, kind of what he's feeling that day. And he called me over to his house because he was going through a hard time in his life. Very successful, good guy. And so he just started asking me about just faith a little bit in God. And really what we got to after several minutes of conversation, what he was really boiling things down to is he had this bitterness towards God. And he said, Rob, basically, if I conceded the fact that there is a God, if I conceded the fact that there is a God, I couldn't follow him because I don't know why a God like that would take my dad when I was so young. There it is. And I told Chris, I said, Chris, I understand, man. I get it. But here's the thing. I got two things I want to just say to you to get you to think about. So number one, you can't say there is no God, and then when you want to invoke a God, you put him in a box and say, well, I can't serve this God, because that's not the God I serve, okay? You got to have the full picture. So you can't have it both ways, all right? But let me tell you about the God that I serve, the God from the Bible, the God that I know from Christianity, okay? The God that I know from Christianity, listen to this, that he was willing to crush his son for your pain so you could have life, and more life. Chris, I can't even wrap my mind around that. The only words that I can come to mind to describe that he was willing to do that, the only way that can put that to some understanding is, and I know this is a general word, but to me, that in itself defines the word love. Now, I could see something stirring in his heart, but here's the thing. See, Chris knew what I was saying was true. You can know a lot of things, but he didn't want to give up his lifestyle. He knew what that would take in the weathering process, potentially, and the fallout of that he felt it would be. And so a lot of times God is asking us to do things, but we don't want to give up our lifestyle, our preferences. I mean, that's the truth. I'm not going to candy coat it for you guys. That's the truth. So I want to ask you a few questions as we're wrapping up. And I want you to, when I ask these questions, feel free to raise your hand and say amen or whatever you feel. I mean, how many of you this morning want to experience God's blessings? How many here want to experience God's promises? How many here want to experience God's freedom for your life and situation? How many here want to experience God's healing for you emotionally and physically? How many of you want to be delivered? How many want to experience those miraculous signs and wonders at times? Well, those things are great, and they're good, and I want those too. But what we're learning today, and what we're going to learn throughout the series, that according to the Bible, you cannot truly receive any of those things without experiencing some form of trial and hardship. And you want to know why? Because those good things, though they are good, you won't appreciate them without the hard realities of life. Do you hear me? Because you'll think God owes you. You think God's supposed to bless you, or reason why God blesses me because I'm a super Christian and the rest of you can't match up. See how prideful we get? See how arrogant we get? God knows this. He wants to test, to say, hey, are you really following me because you really love me? Or you want all the byproducts? You want to have a foot in to get the goods, but you don't want to live the lifestyle. That's the truth. See, when it comes to Christians, it sometimes can be even more so when it comes to us. If we don't go through the hardship in life, then we won't appreciate the blessings when they come because we think God owes us or we are entitled to them because we go to church 40 Sundays out of the year. Well, God, I put in my time. Now you owe me. Don't look at me like you don't think that. When you go through hardship, you say phrases, they pop in. Oh, God, I've done all this for you. Why is this happening? And when that happens, I want you to counteract that with truth. Not feelings, truth. And I want you to say, I'm going to consider this pure joy. I'm going to face trials of many kinds because it's going to test my faith. And the testing of my faith is going to produce perseverance. And I'm going to stay in it so it continues its work so I can be mature and not lack anything. I mean, isn't that a roadmap? See, what we learn today is that trial and suffering is part of our maturing process as Christ followers. We can't have real transformation without desperation. Can I ask you a question? Are you desperate this morning? Are you desperate for God? Where is He at? And you know when you're desperate for God, what happens, it runs into what you want to do in life. Just like my cousin Chris, are you desperate enough to surrender? Because you won't experience true transformation if you don't have a posture of desperation, even if you have all the biblical knowledge and you're set in your ways. I know how this Christian thing works. Do you really think you know? You think you have arrived. You don't think God has more for you. Maybe you need to have a posture of desperation. We need to get to a place where God is all we want and all we need. We need to come back to that statement. Do you want maturity but not maturing? I'm sorry, it just doesn't work that way. You can't have it that way. And next week, we're going to get into how seductive and how easy it is for the world, and it does. It gives us the counterfeit, and it gives us the pleasure, and takes us off track from experiencing true transformation in what Jesus promised and what God said in Isaiah. Life, life, and more life. What Jesus said in John 10:10, I have come to bring you life and life to the full. But just before that, Jesus said, but the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And where he likes to set camp up is when you're going through trials and suffering. Persevere. Weather well. And next week we're going to look at the counterfeits so we can avoid them. I'm excited. I can't wait till we continue on this journey. Will you bow your heads and close your eyes as the worship team comes forward? I want to pray for you. I think it's interesting that God makes this the fall series, church, because I believe there are those of you here that God wants to see, are you desperate for Him? Is your heart desperate for Him? Are you going through the motions? Are you just doing the thing you're supposed to? Because God has more for you, church. And He wants to transform you. And so what I want you to think about as I pray to close out and as the worship team leads us out. I'm just going to make it very simple. I'm not going to drag out any more time. I just want you to ask one question this morning. Are you desperate for God? Where is that at in your life? And as we sing out this last song, I want you to allow that question to pour over you again and again and again. Am I desperate for you, Lord? Am I desperate for you, Lord? Am I desperate for you? Because our Creator God crushed Jesus, you and me. That's love. I just turn my hands up and say, thank you, Father. Are you desperate for me? Be with us now, Lord, as we worship and close. In your name we pray.